Well, hello. It's Danny back here in the studio outside of my house. I got a little room there, and I'm here to talk a little bit about Jesus' wisdom and the gospel and the parables. Um, Jesus says, "No man comes to the Father but by me." And yet we know that before Jesus existed in the flesh, um, there was Abraham, and there was the other prophets before him, the other godlike people like Noah, and we know that these people were accepted to God, that they had come to the Father. So when we say no man comes to the Father but by me, he meant something in particular, and this brings us to the wise man who built his house on a rock. It says he dug deep to find the foundation, and he put his foundation on the rock. And so we have to figure out, what is this deep digging in this foundation that he was talking about. Let's look at that. I did that one time. Uh, see, the greatest thing in the universe is God and the love of God, and understanding that this special kind of love, this love that it's not puffed up and it's not self-serving. It's not um, all about itself and its own preservation, but it cares about the others and their preservation, and it has a responsibility to others, and so this love is. This love is special and it never fails and it's eternal. And I saw that wonderful love of God, and I wrote about it in several of the poems I've written. Um, just because it's just the perfect love, and my understanding is that it's also the creative force behind everything and for the reason for everything is the family, and we are part of God's family as His children or as children of God. Um, but Jesus was the only begotten child, and uh, that's a special place. How did Jesus live his life? He was caring about others, and he was forgiving of others, and his responsibility to others was very special that he took that upon himself and was a servant to many, and to all gave his whole life. But then when we look at that particular aspects, we look at love itself, and we say, what if love is so great? Why do people? How do people not? How do people lose it? How does anybody? How does heaven and hell? How does hell happen when when we have a loving God? And we're all given choice to love or not to love. Our choices to love or not to love, when to love and when not to love. Solomon said there is a time for every purpose under heaven, and so we live in a time frame where we decide when to love, and how to express love. At any rate, love is the goal, and God is the goal, and the pathway to love when things go wrong is that we recognize it, we turn away and from that and turn back to love. And so when people don't love anymore, that's a profound thing. It's like saying that what happened, which was so wonderful, never happened or won't happen anymore, and that's tragedy. But it happens because as human beings we don't forgive all the time. But love never ends. Love does forgive. Love seeks reinstitution. Um, it seeks it's sentimental, and it seeks reunion, and it longs for um, unity, and so love is um, also then forgiveness and kindness, and it's ongoing. And no man comes to the Father unless he's forgiving and kind, and seeks out the Father. That he finds the Father waiting. Um, but if you're not a forgiving person, you may think, well, I'm a lot like God. He's not forgiving either, and if they think that he's not, and they decide to not be themselves, then they don't have a pathway back to love. When they lose um, when they lose the connection, they give up, and they quit seeking love, and that's the tragedy of life without love, and that's what death is. Life without love. It's death is life is not life unless it has a certain quality of life that makes it worth living, and that quality is love. So when Jesus said, "No man comes to the Father but by me," he's saying, I am representative of forgiveness, and I am the forgiveness of the Father. And if you don't share in the forgiveness of the Father, you can't share in the love of the Father. It just makes good sense that you must give this particular thing also in order to receive it. If you're not willing to see the wisdom of it, then how in the world will you see the reality of it? If you can't see that it makes sense, and you refuse to do it yourself, how will you be able to receive it from God? And now that's uh, God being love, and Jesus representing the mercy and forgiveness of God, which we are not only called to receive from God, but to reflect it out towards others. Now, I've said this several times throughout my presentations in so many different ways. I'm saying it again, um, but um, this is that love of God, and the logic of love of Jesus Christ, full of mercy and forgiveness, because no man who makes mistakes, who needs forgiveness, who should be forgiven because he needs it himself, no man comes to the Father but by me, because we make mistakes and we need to be able to find a way back to the Father. You can't come to the Father unless you've gone away. You can't go away. You can't come back until you go. But we've all fallen short of the glory of God. We all need to come back. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. There are three. And the attributes then, if the Father is love and the Son is mercy and forgiveness, then try to pursue what the aspects of the Holy Spirit are. They may be different for you than they are for me, but I began to try to make a list, or try to understand what Jesus himself would call the attributes or the characteristics of the Holy Spirit. And we know that Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the light." And he was speaking also then about truth, and it being an important part of what that Holy Spirit is. It's a crystal clear kind of an understanding, but a truth that says it values it values the truth itself, and it is truthful because it values the truth and the whole truth. Not just a partial truth like Satan may set forth. Um, and anytime there's a partial truth, there's something up. And when it says that God said that you should not eat of this, why did He do that? And Eve started doubting. Well, maybe God's motives weren't loving after all. And this is what Satan was trying to put forth to Eve, that God was holding something back from them, and with this free wills and this temptation and this curiosity, she wound up eating of that tree of knowledge of good and evil. The idea that it has knowledge, somehow enlightens the mind. Um, Satan never, it's never pointed out. It doesn't have all the knowledge. It doesn't have all the knowledge of good and evil. Paul writes, we know in part, we prophesy in part. So the tree of knowledge of good and evil was something that it wasn't the whole, complete uh, knowledge and understanding of all things, but it was an attempt to consume it. That was the problem, and a little bit of that without the whole picture is a pretty dangerous thing. And so that's the fall of man, of course. But God's saying, don't eat of it. You're better off. You're better off not exploring this tree, which is right in the center of the garden. It's like saying, why put that tree in the middle of the garden? Yeah, but it's about choice too. It's about our free will, and the very thing that is dangerous to us is a part of our soul itself. It's free will and the will and the choice of when and what, and how and when, how and why. These are all part of our individuality, and we are growing. Uh, we are growing up. We are maturing, and we are the children of God, and we have choices. We need to see that this tree of knowledge of good and evil that we're not supposed to be eating of is very part of our individuality also, and so the right to choose when to love, and the right to decide who and where and how to love is a very interesting part of what it is that makes us exist, because because unless we can choose to love, we're not really participants in it. We're 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 overwhelmed. Our individuality is overwhelmed by it, love itself, if we're not part of deciding when and how and why. And so, like I said, we're children of God, but we're maturing, and this is all part of our growth pains of maturing into, adult spirits, and this is part of, I think, what makes sense to me. And I've dug deep, and that's where my depth there's where my depth took me in my exploration of why things are the way that they are. And I hope if you haven't dug yourself, that maybe my example might help you dig deeper than I have. At any rate, truth and hope and equality. And the equality aspects is that I recognize that you're equal with me, and because of that, I have a responsibility to you. This is not equality where you think, well, I'm the son of God, or you might be a son of God, but I know, or I'm a son of God, and now I'm going to find a way to exploit that. The Bible mentions that Jesus thought it not robbery to be equal with God. God being equal with God, being that he was a son of God, but he thought it not robbery, which implies that Moses and Muhammad and several other people, they won't say, I'm a son of God, because they don't want to put themselves up on a pedestal. But but Jesus didn't look like didn't seem like he put himself up on a pedestal to call himself the Son of God. Rather, he said, I'm the son of my Father. I've got a whole lot of work to do, because this world that he's made right now is in a big mess, and I'm trying to take responsibility for this and fix it. And so, if you're the Son of God, God's saying, "Look at this. There's lots that's going wrong here, and I need your help, son, to get it fixed." And so, if you fail, you're making us both look bad. Responsibility. Responsibility is what love is about, it as much as it is about family and celebration. It's about responsibility. At any rate, equality, there you go. Equality, many are called and few are chosen, because few are chosen and one above the other. Why? Because God's not a respecter of persons. And so you have this dilemma where we keep wanting to celebrate the superiority of one aspect, but we want to ignore the responsibility on the other hand, and you can't have your cake and eat it too, can you? Truth, hope, equality, and faith. And faith is another aspect of love. And the writer says faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love, which says that faith and hope must be pretty great also. And so, faith, I call one the pursuit of what is good and what is loving, and the other the patience to wait for the rest of the people around you to also recognize what it is that you already know is the value of love. Not just the value of love, but it means that because love is of great value,